Okay, so today we're going to continue some practice with completing the square and what happens when it's not equal to 0. So let's look at our first example. So notice that our variables are already by themselves and the constant is already on that right hand side. So we don't have to really worry about step 1, it's done. So our next step, let's just put in that new c value that we want to get. So we have x squared plus 4x, and I'm just going to rewrite it so I have my blank in there, and then I have 6 plus blank. Remember, if you do it to one side, you have to do it to the other. So when I'm going to add something into a problem, I got to add it to both sides. So to get this blank, our c value, we're going to do that b over 2 divided by 2, or b over 2 squared, excuse me, so 4 over 2, and then square it. Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared means that blank is 4, which means that that blank is 4. And by doing that, we've completed the square. So we know that this equation right here is a perfect square. So it becomes x plus 2 squared equals 10. And then we need to take the square root of both sides. So I have x plus 2 is plus or minus the square root of 10. Do not forget your plus or minus. And then I got to subtract 2 to both sides. So x is negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 10. And since 10 is not a perfect square and it doesn't go down any further, then that right there is our answer. And again, remember, you can write it as two separate things, but you don't have to. You could write it as negative 2 plus the square root of 10 and negative 2 minus the square root of 10, but you do not have to do it that way. Okay, our next problem, we have x squared minus 8x equals 9. So again, our c value is already moved, so let's rewrite it so we have an opening there. So we have x squared minus 8x plus blank equals 9 plus blank. So to find our blank, we do our b divided by 2 and square it to get that. And so negative 8 divided by 2 squared is 16. So I'm going to put 16 in both of my blanks. I've now completed the square, so we know that our equation here is a perfect square, and it must mean that it must factor to x minus 4 times x minus 4, which is really x minus 4 squared. And then 9 and 16 give us 25. And then we can solve by doing the square root. So I have x minus 4 is plus or minus the square root of 25 is 5. And then we add 4 to both sides. So I'm going to come up here. X is 4 plus or minus 5. And so when we break that, 4 plus 5 and 4 minus 5. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 minus 5 is negative 1. So x is 9 and negative 1 in no particular order. And our next problem. So uniquely enough, if you notice on this one, when you first glance, it looks like you have an a value that's not 1, but actually, in reality, this is rearranged. So remember our quadratic form, or our quadratic standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So I need to rewrite this as x squared plus 6x, and then I'm going to put in that blank equals 15 plus blank. So we got to figure out the blank by taking b divided by 2 and squaring it. So 6 divided by 2 squared is 9. So 9 is going to go in both of our blanks here. And then because we just completed that square, then we know that it's a perfect square. So it becomes x plus 3 squared, and that's equal to 24. So then square root both sides. And I have x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 24. And then I need to minus my 3 to both sides. And I'm running out of room here. So x is negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 24. Well, if we break down the square root of 24, 6 and 4, 2 and 2 and 2 and 3. So there's a group there, and these two don't leave, so we end up with x is equal to -3 plus or minus 2 square root of 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. And that is as far